That was your fastest lap of the session.
Hey guys, so our CTD program is finally back. Here we are starting season 3, so we're a little bit into iRacing season 1 for 2025, but wanted to have a little break for the holidays there, so we are back at Daytona Road Course. So this is going to be a fun week. We have Daytona all weekend officials, and then we'll have the Roar before the 24 coming up next weekend. So that will be a GT4 endurance race around Daytona as well. It's a lot of fun if you haven't driven it before, so I highly recommend you do it. Now, a couple key topics to go over for Daytona itself. The track itself is not very difficult. Getting that last 5, 6 tenths out of the track is going to be the trickiest part. Now, the more important aspects of Daytona is how to race it and not so much its lap time, so we're going to try and cover a lot of that stuff. Now, getting right into our lap. As we cross the line, we definitely want to stay pretty low on the bank. We're going to stay pretty tight up against the bottom of the, on the apron itself. As we head into turn 1, we have a couple different braking markers to use here. Now, my personal preference is to use this last white line on the banking itself or on the oval coming into turn 1. Depending on your graphics, we can also use this orange box here on the right hand side of the fence. Now again, this is just going to be a reference. We want to start braking somewhere around this area. Now as we're coming in into the corner, we want to keep it wide. So we're going to open the corner up as much as possible. Think about trying to trace this white line with the car. So we're going to go from 6th all the way down to 3rd when we turn in. And then we're going to use our last downshift in the second to help gain rotation coming into the corner. Once we touch that apex or get close to the grass, we can get back on throttle pretty aggressively. The GT4s, you have to slow down so much to not understeer that wheel slippage on exits not too much of a concern. Now coming into turn 2, or our first hairpin, I'm using this 100 board as a reference again. Now in the cockpit view, it's out of sight on my field of view. I do drive a pretty narrow field of view. So as that's passing, we want to brake somewhere in between that 100 board going missing and where this service road starts to begin. So I'm actually braking just even a little bit sooner than that. We're going to downshift into 3rd at turn in, and then once again use that second gear downshift to help rotation. Now think about the speed trace that we're going to have here. We don't want to coast through this corner, so ideally your braking zone should consist of a straight line heavy braking and then trail braking all the way to apex, and as soon as we touch this yellow curving here, that's when we want to release and then reapply our throttle. Now tracking out, if you find that you're crossing this yellow curving on the left-hand side, that just means that you got on throttle too soon. So that's kind of a symptom, something to keep in mind. So wait just a little bit longer for rotation before you start to get back on throttle, and our car should track all the way out to the left, but we should be on the right side of this yellow curving here. Now we can use all the track surface on the left-hand side here without getting any incident points. Now coming up to the kink, in GT4 Fixed, there's not going to be too much concern of people trying to pass here unless you had a really bad run out of the first hairpin. Now in multi-class, if some of you guys venture off over there, this is a prime passing zone for prototypes. So don't drive in your mirrors, but definitely keep an eye on it. Make sure you're not going to have any prototypes trying to send it inside right at the point of turn-in. Once again, in GT4s, they're slow enough that we don't have to worry too much about the car getting loose through the kink, so you can be flat out through there. And then I like to brake right in between the beginning and the end of this service road here. So to go to far chase. So we can see those brake lights come on right in the center. Now I try to open this corner up as well, so you'll see my left side tires drive a little bit into the grass. We're going to downshift into 3rd and start our turn in, and again, waiting to downshift in a second until we're somewhere in between the middle of turn in and the apex of the second horseshoe. So let's keep an eye on that throttle blip for that downshift. So we can see that happens in between that initial turn in and when we're approaching the apex. Once again, that downshift, that delayed downshift, is going to help us turn the car just a little bit more into the corner. Now there is a little bit of camber on the exit of this apex, so you'll see a lot of cars stay pretty tight on exit. This is just to keep the car in that camber section, and that's going to help us get to full throttle faster. And on exit, we can travel all the way out to the left-hand side here. You can dip your left side wheels into the dirt grass section ever so slightly before you get an incident point. But I would just make a point of not going into this patch to avoid the incident point altogether. Now this is arguably the trickiest corner on the track. The braking zone and the references here are always in question. They're a little bit hard to find. Now I start to brake right at the beginning of this service road. We want to stay all the way to the right, so our right side tire is going on this curbing here. We want to get an early turn in. It's actually fairly important to stay pretty tight here. So we're going to get the car mostly turned by the point of apex. And we want to consider this almost a double apex. So as we come out, you'll notice I don't track all the way out to the right hand side. If you find your right side tires are getting on or close to this right side curbing on exit, you carry too much speed on entry and at the apex itself. Now you might ask why that's a bad thing. All it's going to do is delay how soon you get on throttle. Because again, these cars don't make that much power and this track is so large. We want to keep the distance as tight as possible, but still being at 100% throttle. Now, the trick as well is to make this a double apex. So we hit that first one with the yellow curbing, and then we actually want to use the corner of this white line coming onto the oval as almost a secondary apex. If you find yourself driving somewhere out here in the middle or getting close to the wall on exit, something definitely went wrong on the entry and at apex itself. You probably carried too much speed or you get on throttle way too early. Now the other point to mention, this will be a big passing opportunity. It's definitely very important to be the first one getting on throttle, whether that's gradually building throttle or getting to 100%. Because it's leading onto a long straight, typically speaking, the first person to get on throttle will win that drag race. Now in the fixed series, this is where the draft really starts to come into play. The infield, the Porsche will be fairly strong. Getting onto the oval and coming in through the bus stop, and on exit, the McLaren, Aston, and Mercedes are going to be a little bit stronger here. So it's really important if you're in the Porsche to get a good exit here. And then the other thing to mention is if you do any multi-class racing, prototypes will try to send it in here. If you can get into the corner before they pass you, you can keep that tight line. They can drive along the outside of you without any issues. Just something to keep in mind. Now, of course, we want to stay pretty low on the banking, stay tucked up against the apron here. If you drive onto it, technically it's faster, but that's outside the spirit of competition, and I believe you also get an incident point for getting down there, but I did not test that. Now, as far as draft goes, if you're in the draft, great. Hopefully you can get around the car that you're drafting before we come into the braking zone for the bus stop. If you're the lead car and somebody's drafting you, there is potential to defend into this corner, but depending on their closing speed, it might just be easier for you to let them through and then get the draft on them coming out of the exit of the bus stop towards the straight, or towards the start finish, excuse me. Now backing up, taking a look at our braking zone for the bus stop. I like to use this yellow box on the right hand side here. I do believe it will depend on your graphics as well. I know on a lower graphic setting you definitely do not see this arrow pointing to the left. So we're going to brake from 6th gear down to 4th gear, and we actually want to turn in pretty early. The bus stop will account for quite a bit of your lap time as well. Now the way we want to think about the bus stop, on entry and on exit, we want to use these white pieces of concrete as a runway, so to speak, for your tires. So coming in, we want our left side tires to be on the concrete patch. Now the 2 apex spots in the middle, we want to chop a little bit. So you'll notice the car does not follow the same angle or direction that the concrete patch does. And I actually chopped just the very end of it off. We're going to do something similar to the second one, and by now we should pick up throttle as well. And that's another point to note. We want to treat this somewhat like a chicane, so we want the car pointed pretty good towards the left when we're coming into the corner, and we want to get our direction change early coming in. It's very easy to get incident points through here, so try your best to stay out of the grass. And then on exit, once again, our left side tires are going to drive right across this concrete patch. Now you can dip your left side tires into the grass ever so slightly, but that's going to be another case of avoid it if you can to avoid the incident point altogether. And overall, that's going to be our lap around Daytona. Something else to mention, it's very easy to get slowdowns coming through the bus stop, especially on exit. So if you do get one, try to serve it at the top of the banking here. This is going to prevent you from getting rear-ended as you come to serve your slowdown, and then it's also just a respectable thing to do for everybody else on track. Otherwise, if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to leave a comment. Best of luck in officials this week, and hopefully see some of you guys in some races or at the Roar before the 24.